of training. We have plenty of those. So very happy to be on here talking with you all today. Like Ann mentioned, as I'm going through this presentation, if you have any questions whatsoever, I'll do my best to answer. But I know between the experience that Ann and Aaron have, I think we'll be able to get any of those questions answered for everybody. So thank you all for having me. So as my title slide said in Ann's introduction, I'm a business analyst team lead at Republic Bank in Louisville, Kentucky. It's a mid-sized bank. We're right around $6.5 billion in assets right now. One of the biggest employers in the banking sector in Louisville and Kentucky. I've been with the bank now for 5 years, all 5 years in the business analysis role. When I started out with the organization, I worked on a very small development team, almost trying to go for an agile approach to software development, kind of doing quick hit projects. That team, as the organization matured, went away. So now I'm working in our project management office. Just earlier this year, in January, I went from just a business analyst, regular old business analyst role to a team lead. My team, including myself, it's a total of 4 BAs with varying levels of experience. And it's been a really great experience working at this organization just because, and Ann, I think you may have some insight into this from our first encounter, we're in the process of getting procedures and standards set around business analysis to figure out how we can work most effectively with our customers. For us, our customers are generally internal business teams that ultimately interface with our banking clients. So one of the big drivers for me and my desire to get my certification was ultimately because, like I said, I'll say we're in our infancy, though we've had business analysis for a while, but we want to be sure that everybody on the team, everyone in the project management office overall, the project managers I work with, we all have the same understanding of what it is we are supposed to be doing, how we're supposed to be doing it, what value we can provide, and just really be all on the same page. It's very helpful, especially when you're trying to come up with procedures and standards for a team. So as a part of that, as the project management office as a whole was encouraged to get a certification, be that a CBAP for the business analysts or a PMP for our project managers. And again, the goal there is just to kind of have standardization across the whole team and ensure everyone's working from kind of the same skill set. So I was fortunate enough, this was something that my organization helped me financially with to go ahead and pay for the classes and also for the exam fees. And I know we'll talk a little bit about that later. But I had the opportunity. I've been a business analyst for a total of 8 years now. So obviously, I think something that comes along with this role is you're constantly learning. And I realized, hey, beyond just the encouragement to get the certification, I was ready to learn something new, add something to my skill set, enhance the toolbox, and get a certification along the way. Why not? I do work with a total of 3 other individuals at Republic right now that have their CBAP as well. So it was really helpful to have other folks in the organization to ask questions to, similar to kind of this forum, right? How do I go about doing this? What's the best way to do it? What was your experience, right? And that's what I'm here to talk to you all about today. In addition, there's kind of the other obvious reasons as to why you'd be interested in getting a certification, a professional certification of any kind, but specifically the CBAP. Career advancement was something I wanted to note. Obviously, like I said, enhance the toolbox, improve my everyday processes. I think we as humans, we get kind of stuck in our ways sometimes, and it's helpful to learn something new, see an alternative viewpoint. And I think it's really cool with the CBAP certification and the studying process and, ultimately preparing for the exam, how much you learn and the different exposure that you get to alternative viewpoints, and understanding what other tools you may have at your disposal. Increased earnings potential. I'm sure if you're on this call and you're interested in this, I would imagine you've probably done some level of research and seen, I think the number I saw was it's like an average of a 19% increase when you go to your next job if you have that CBAP certification. So that's always a great reason. If you can make some more money and do better at your job, that's always positive. And I've kind of touched on the enhanced skill set. I keep saying the tools, but like in my role as the team lead and working with different business organizations within the bank, I see a variety of projects, a variety of approaches from different business units to how they want to get projects done. And it's useful to be able to pivot and decide, here's what I want to take from the BABOK for this situation. I saw this, maybe I could use this as an outline for what I want to do when I'm building my requirements document or testing documentation. It's just really useful to have that knowledge readily available, and then also to be able to just bounce back, reference the BABOK, and hopefully find what it is that you're looking for. It's a wealth of knowledge. It's a very, very in-depth book, very well put together, comprehensive. That would be the correct word to use. So a lot of different situations that you're going to see in your day-to-day, they're going to be covered in there, or at least give you a different viewpoint maybe as to what you're thinking. A lot of times it's just, how do I get started in a specific situation, or what should I be doing? What should I be looking for as I'm going through and I'm doing my elicitation? What tasks are expected of me as a business analyst when I'm doing elicitation? What are some of the inputs I need to do these tasks? What are the outputs? And it's nice because the way the BABOK is put together, it illustrates it in a flow. And I really do. I mean, if we're all business analysts on this call, I think we like to think in a logical order and process model. And that's the way that it's outlined in the BABOK. So it's very, very well put together, a lot to learn though. And I think that's why we want to talk today about kind of the study process. And I'll share my experience with kind of what worked. And I do have some good insight into what doesn't work as well. So I'm looking forward to mentioning that here. So before I get into the specifics on the study and exam process, Anne, do we have any questions in the chat, or does anyone have any questions right now? Good to go?
We're good to go. Yeah.
Excellent. So Anne mentioned I took part in the Bluegrass IIBA. Is it just the BABOK training course? I forget what the exact title was. Anyway, I think at that point we were meeting, it was just Tuesday nights. It was for 3 hours on Tuesday nights for 11 weeks. Anne and Aaron, if I'm saying that incorrectly, let me know, but I think that was the duration. Like I said, the BABOK is a very large book, and it's very comprehensive in terms of all the skill sets, tasks, tools that you need to be an effective business analyst. So there's a lot to cover. So each session, those 3 hour sessions, we would have speakers. Anne was one of our speakers during a couple different classes. And then we had another gentleman that was speaking for the majority of the other classes. And what we would do is we'd select a chapter, and we would go through the chapter, talk through the content of the chapter, talk through kind of real world use cases of things through PowerPoint. And it was very helpful to have all of that organized and be able to reference. And obviously, if say we meet week 1, the expectation is when I show up week 2, that I've prepared for that next class in terms of reading the next chapter, at least having an understanding of the materials so that I would be ready for class. Something that kept me on track, because we're all professionals here, we're all busy, we have a lot going on in our lives, was we had homework assignments between each class. And they were fun little assignments that kind of force you to go back, re-examine your knowledge. We had crossword puzzles, things like that, that we were able to do between classes. And then the expectation is that prior to the next class, you turn that in. So I like that structure a lot, just because, like I said, it can be difficult for me to find the time and just buckle down and study. So to have tasks done before the class kind of kept me honest in that regard. It kept me on track. So that was very, very helpful. I cannot emphasize the reading the BABOK piece, though. That was insight I got from everyone that I talked to in my preparation, was go through the classes, do the worksheets, do everything that you can, but make sure you're actually reading and rereading the book, right? Just so you have all that knowledge kind of rehearsed by the time that you go in and you sit for the exam. It makes things much easier to do as much memorization and preparation in advance as possible. So definitely, as you're going through this process, you're considering getting your CBAP, just make sure you keep yourself honest and that you're reading the material and keeping yourself prepared. One of the great things that came out of that class was we had the opportunity to take the watermark practice exam for the CBAP. So it's, like any topic, it's one thing to go through and you do the studying and you get an idea maybe of what the test may look like. And the whole time your instructors are sharing with you, hey, this is how this may look on the exam, right? Well, we finally got to a point where we got to take a practice exam, which was extremely helpful. Because it's tough sometimes to understand how the different concepts in the BABOK could be translated into a multiple choice test. The CBAP exam is fully multiple choice. So it was very helpful, again, just to see how those things could be formatted. In addition to just the watermark test, we had a Google test that was shared. I think it was just a Google form, but it's laid out with questions in the format that they would be on the CBAP exam. I think I took that because we had unlimited access to that. I think I took that probably 20 to 30 times at different times. And that was kind of always my benchmark. With that one specifically, the questions wouldn't change. So it was a good way for me to just make sure, hey, this isn't the longest test maybe, but how am I actually retaining this information? One of the things that I noticed early on with the material is that, and especially once you get the practice tests in front of you, is the way that some of the questions can be worded. The answers, there's always going to be the right answer, right? But the wrong answers aren't always obviously wrong. Things can sound similar. Some of the words even look similar. And it really forces you and reinforces you to go through and do the test over and over again, just to kind of understand conceptually how that might be put together when you sit down and you take the CBAP exam. So I cannot speak highly enough of the practice tests. You've absolutely got to take some of those before you actually get in and take the test. If nothing else, just to see the way that the questions can be formatted. I got flashcards, and I know you can buy these through Watermark. I ended up buying them through Amazon, though. And I don't have them with me. They're actually in the office right now. But I have a huge stack of flashcards that Watermark Learning puts together in preparation for the CBAP. I don't want to overstate how many flashcards there are. I would say conservatively like 400. Those were very useful. They're all color coded and they're organized by chapter. So the different chapters of the BABOK go into different concepts. So I'd be able to just easily pick up the purple concept, look at that, and then go on to the blue one. And I could kind of organize my studying that way. The flashcards were extremely helpful. That's kind of the way my brain works. I talked about just reinforcement earlier. Flashcards definitely were an effective tool for me in my training. I looked for like some online flashcards, and I did find some free ones at some point, and they were helpful, but it seemed like they were inconsistent, and I was worried that maybe what I'm looking at is not the right thing, and that's why I ended up just getting the ones from Watermark, just because I knew that the content they would have on the flashcards would be exactly what I needed to be focusing on during my study. And I said it earlier, I had to put it on here twice. Just make sure you're reading the BABOK. It all goes back to reading the book and understanding the concepts. So just stay focused throughout your studies. So when it actually came to the exam, and this is where I'm going to get into some of my lessons learned and things not to do. And some of the things I'm about to say, y'all are going to be thinking, well, that's obvious. And I know that, but I wanted to share that with you because that was my real experience. So I took the exam in person. I scheduled it initially after the training class, I think 6 weeks after. My idea was that by the 11th week wrapping up, if I gave myself 6 weeks to continue going through the exercises, going through flashcards, doing my practice tests, and continuing to read the BABOK, I'd be good to go. And at that time, I thought that was plenty of time. I got about 4 weeks into that, and I got cold feet about actually, should I keep my exam scheduled that day? And I had trepidation about that, so I pushed it off once, and I pushed it off twice, and I pushed it off 3 times. I pushed it off, I think at the end of the day, it totaled up to like 7 months after the finalization of the class. That is not a great strategy. That's not going to surprise any of you. But the intent was that, I'll continue to study, I'll get more and more comfortable, and then I'll be ready. I think what I actually did was I kind of kicked the can so much. I was like, well, I don't know. And you start to doubt how ready you actually were. If I could get in a time machine and go back, I think I would have taken it 6 weeks after. I don't think that that was a mistake. For me, 6 weeks made sense. I don't know that kicking the can and continuing to study, how much that actually helped me. I think I was probably ready at that point, but I was just worried, right? You're allocating this time, you're spending all this time preparing for this exam. You want to make sure you pass it. So that's why I want to share my experience and kind of what not to do in kicking the can, because once you go through, whether it's a boot camp or you go through the training class through IIBA, I think you're going to be much more ready than you may feel. And you'll save yourself a lot of time and potentially anxiety by not just kicking that out there. Strategy, Aaron, you helped me out a ton with this. I think you touched on this like very early in the course about going through. So you go through, there's how many, Anna and Aaron, could you tell me how many questions there are? I can't remember the questions. I just know the minutes. I definitely remember the minutes. Is it over 200? I don't know what it is, but it's a long exam, okay? So you want to be sure that you only have 210 minutes to complete the exam. You want to be sure that you're not spending too much time on each question. So early on, like I said, Aaron was preaching, make sure that you take the strategy of going through, basically do one pass. Whatever questions you're comfortable answering on that first pass, answer them then. Get through, and then you can flag the questions that you don't answer. So it was actually really great the way the software is set up. There's actually a flag that you set. So you'll have the questions listed out on the numbers of the question listed out on the bottom. And then if I flag a question, that question then has a little flag next to it. And then when I get through the end, I can go back to the start and see kind of where I left off. So I did 3 separate rounds. My first round through, I probably got that done in, I'd say, the first hour out of the 210 minutes. I went back to some questions that I knew would take some more time or some more thought, maybe those that I was more comfortable with answering in that second round. I do want to call out, regardless of whether you do the online proctor exam or the in-person exam like I did, you will have a pencil, piece of paper, and a calculator. And I did need all of those items as I was going through. There were some scenario-based questions that really did require me to just write things out and think through. And then there were some math questions that I had to double check myself. Nothing too extreme. There's going to be some equations like PERT and that you're going to go through and you learn about through your study. But it's always helpful to be able to check your math too. So definitely take advantage of those tools. Know that you have those at your disposal. At least in my in-person experience, I had the option to take my paper back up and get a second piece of paper, which I did do. I also, just from like a housekeeping perspective, I was able to use the restroom. I got up in the middle, and it was nice to step away there for a couple of minutes, kind of clear my brain and come back. Because as you can imagine, as you're going through an exam this size and the magnitude, your mind is moving pretty quickly. So it's nice to be able to take a step back. I definitely wanted to call out, I talked about going through 3 rounds. You get 210 minutes to complete this exam. I literally took 209 minutes and 30 seconds. I wanted to be sure that I wasn't making any, rash decisions on maybe some of those last questions that I found more difficult. And I'm glad that I did, because, towards the end there, I was very confident, and then I start to worry. I'm like, well, with these questions, I don't know, are these going to be the questions that cause me to fail the test? And I wanted to be sure I wasn't just like giving up on them and just randomly picking answers. The other thing that Aaron preached very early on was, if you have a gut feeling about an answer, don't overthink it. Just go with your gut. And so by the time I got to the 3rd round, where it was kind of maybe lower confidence in what my answers would be, I took that approach, and I think that served me well. I was very happy once I clicked submit to see that you get the immediate feedback that you passed the exam, and then you get kind of a breakdown of the different knowledge areas and how you scored. So I was very excited at the end when I got that success message. But I think a lot of that was taking all of that time. I was not in a rush at all. I figured if I have 210 minutes, I'm taking 210 minutes. There's no reason not to. So the biggest thing in terms of the completion of the exam that I can recommend that you prepare for is keep that round strategy in mind. Make sure that you're not spending too much time up front. You can always go back to the question, right? But if you're taking too long and you get to the end and you have to rush through the end, you're not going to be in a position for success at that point. So yeah, that was my exam day experience. Value in terms of why, I touched on why I wanted to get this earlier. And some of this is kind of repetitive maybe, so I apologize for that. I was very excited to say I'm actually certified in what I do. I know most of us on this call are business analysts, and when you tell your friends or your family that, they're like, what is that? What do you do? And so it's one thing to be able to explain that than to be able to say, hey, I'm certified in what I do. They still ask, what is that, right? But I can at least say I'm certified now. That's cool with anything in life. I mentioned just kind of having the same knowledge base for my team to work on, whether it's conceptual or just in the terminology, and just knowing that, hey, I think that this topic we're talking about is referenced in the BABOK here. Let's take a look. It's nice to be able to be on the same page with everyone and have that reference point to go back to, and to be able to talk through it knowledgeably as well. And then, of course, the additional financial incentive for your job, just being able to have it, something as silly as having it in my email signature. I do feel like there's an air of, hey, this person is certified on what they're talking about with business analysis, potentially more trustworthy too. So all upsides, and that's kind of how I look at the value of it. So I know I talked quite a bit. I wanted to leave some time for Q&A. Hopefully I've done that. Oh, maybe not. But what do we have in the chat, Ann? Has anyone shared?
We do. Yep, we do have a question from James asking if you can provide an example of something that you learned in the certification or through that certification process that you were able to directly use in your work.
Oh my goodness, that's a fantastic question. So just working in a project management office, we're all kind of more analytical thinkers, whether it's project manager or BA. And as we're putting our standards and our procedures together, putting together the actual workflow for how a business analyst or a public bank works, we were able to take, information from the BABOK and put it directly into our procedure. So I think that's like the most immediate thing that comes to mind is as we're revising what our requirements look like, what they sound like, how they're written, that's coming now directly from the BABOK. And what we've tried to do is structure the information from the BABOK in such a way that when we have a new business analyst that starts out at the bank, say they're not certified, before they get their certification, they can at least reference that procedure and have an idea of why it is that we're writing things in a certain way and why our process is what it is. So it gives kind of a backing to that documentation that we're putting together. That was definitely the most real world example. And even during my preparation for the exam, we had already started this process of getting the procedures and standards put together. So it was helpful also to be able to reference that information because it was kind of like I was studying while I was putting, my actual work product together. So that was very helpful. Hopefully that answers your question, James. It's a great question. What else do we got?
Just so you know, Jared, Ann and I were answering some of the questions you asked during the number of questions on the exam. So we put all 3 exams in the chat and that. So anybody who doesn't have the chat up can see that there. But the CBAP exam has 120 multiple choice questions, and there's always 4 answer options, not 2, not 3. No yes, no's. It's 4 answer options on each one. There are some case study, what they call case study ones, which is extra text that you'll have to read. I had one of our members who recently took the CBAP said one of the case studies was 3 pages long, but there's 3 diagrams in it, so that takes up space. But still, extra reading for you to do and everything. And we'll tell you how to handle those. And if you wish to take this in rounds, as Jared was suggesting and everything. So the CCBA has 130, what they call scenario. So there's some standalone questions that are just memory recall in that. And then they put some scenario, puts a BA in a scenario and asks you what to do or what are they doing? You know, what technique are they using? Things like that. And then the ECBA is 50 questions. You only have an hour to do that. Oh, I didn't say that. CBAP, 120 questions, 3.5 hours to do case study type questions. Now, some of them are just case study, not all of them. CCBA, 130 scenario, some scenario questions. You have 3 hours to complete that one. And then the ECBA is 50, and it's strictly memory recall, straight out of the BABOK. And you have an hour to complete that one. I see.
Another thing, specifically with the scenario questions, just to add on, and this is another thing that you'll cover in the course, is the basic test taking strategy of, as you're reading through the scenarios, try to pick out the information that's actually applicable to the question. I mean, Aaron, you just mentioned like a 3-page long scenario, right? I found that when I was taking the test, there was sometimes I'd only have to reference information from a couple of those paragraphs to actually get the questions answered. So it is, you know, applying critical thinking as you're going through reading that scenario, even when you're reading it the first time, and kind of anticipating where it may be going, because there is definitely some extraneous information that's thrown in there. So I know that's just kind of a basic test taking strategy, but definitely something that helped me out when I was taking the exam.
Yeah, IIBA is very good at giving you superfluous information.
Yes, that's the word.
So I like the word you used. I see Ann put the chat to the Watermark Learning flashcards. So I think she did that when you were talking about them. If you do take our upcoming study group, and Ann has given the promo discount code. So when you register for our study group, it'll, in that registration process, it'll ask for a promo code. You use that one, you can get 20% off. And but you will also get either a CBAP or an ECBA study guide out of this study group. So that's part of the price of the study group. So don't go out and purchase it ahead of time, then get into a study group. You know, you're buying it in the study group.
I was trying to share a couple of screenshots in the chat of the flashcards for those that wanted to see them, but it's not letting me drop images in there, so I'm not able to do that. But I also had the flashcards, and they, as Jared mentioned, it's a huge lot of them. So
do you think was 400 the appropriate number to be conservative with? I was going to say 600, and I don't think 600 is too far off.
Let me see if I can share real quick. I have okay, can y'all see this?
Yes.
Ooh, you put them in the rings too.
I did put them in rings. Now, just to kind of, I had to hole punch everything myself. So yeah, when these are some of the study aids. So these are the flashcards. And here's an example, like it'll have, how do I drop this? So, they're two-sided. So one side will have, the information, the back side will have the answer. So, the nice thing about these is they're very portable too. You can, grab these and take them with you. And as you've got time, here or there waiting in the parking lot for your kid's baseball game, which was me all the time, I'm flipping through flashcards. So Aaron had mentioned also the Watermark Learning one of the study guides, another aid that comes with it, the study table. So, this is kind of just another thing that you have access to as well. So I just wanted to share that with you because Jared did mention it. And it is a huge lot of, you can see the thickness of each one of these little groups here. So that's all I wanted to share.
I actually got the flashcards right before we were going on a long trip, and I knew I'd be on the plane for a while, and I figured, I'll just get these. It's easier than lugging the Babcock around, although they still take up some space. Don't get it wrong.
Yeah, they do.
I will say, don't be driving and use your flashcards.
Yep.
Not a good idea. But
that's good advice.
The study tables, you'll get those as part of our study group. So if you're going to participate in the upcoming study group, get registered within the next week. As Ann said earlier, the early bird special and the discount code that you got today expire next Friday. So you have a week to get in. But you will also get those study tables as part of the study group. We call them study sheets, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, it
is. You will get, Jared mentioned earlier, our other student homework that we do, many crossword puzzles, word finds, fill in the blank, all kinds of, we change it up to a variety, keep it interesting.
Yeah, and it is. It's actually fun to go through and do a crossword like that, and you're learning the whole way too. I liked the homework.
Well, if there are no further questions or anything that you'd like to, speak about or ask about, I think that we can be respectful of everyone's time and wish you all a good weekend. And we hope to see you in our upcoming study group.
Anybody?
Thanks for having me today. It was great to talk to everyone.
Thank you, Jared. Yeah, very nice presentation. Thank you.
Anybody have any last minute questions? Get Jared while he's here.
You can find me on LinkedIn too.
Andrea says thanks. Shanada said thank you.
Of course. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Everybody, have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Yes, James, that is fine. Connect with all of us on LinkedIn and put in the chats, connect with Bluegrass IIBA chapter on LinkedIn. So we'd love to have you. Thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.